So, Kiah, first of all, um, I need to pass on thanks from my son. He sat and watched the
How old is
film
he?
with me. He is 13, and
Ooh,
he
that's quite young for this
he
one.
yeah,
No, it's okay,
I
man.
made the
I
parental
watched it with my
decision that it
13
was
year old
cool.
nephew the other day. So like, no judgment, man. He loved it too. Yeah.
He wanted me to personally say thank you. He thought it was
Oh,
brilliant. Yeah, he had an absolute blast with it. It was a joy watching it with
oh,
him
that's
and
fantastic, man.
seeing
If
him
you can
kind of.
get the younger audiences, man, it's really hard, because they grow up in these $200 million Marvel movies. They're very hard to please. So if he liked it, I'm
Yeah,
very happy. Yeah.
yeah. No, he really did enjoy it, as did I. I had an absolute blast with it, and um, I thought it was quite an interesting transition, coming from as you did, a giant spider
Yeah.
in Sting to this silent prehistoric predator in Beast of War, and I just wondered what was it that made you decide to make another kind of movie about a killer animal? Was it something that was always on your wish list to do a shark movie?
No, because I was scared. Because I didn't want to embarrass myself in the shadow of Spielberg. I kind of, if I'm completely honest, I was, I probably wouldn't have done a shark film, but like, my producer called me a couple of years ago and he's like, "You got anything set on water?" And I'm like, "No, why?" And he goes, "I've got access to a tank. Can you write something set on water?" And I'm like, "Oh no, that's going to have to be a shark film." And I'm like, "Oh God." So really, my bar was to not embarrass myself, in the shadow of Jaws. And so, everything else is just me trying desperately to make something interesting and original in a genre that has already been perfected by a master. So, yeah, I probably wouldn't have chosen to do a shark film. But when you're doing it, you got to do it, and it's like, okay, well, it's got to be 90% practical. Like we'll only go digital like when we absolutely absolutely have to, and keep those shots to a minimum. Like every shark film that comes out, and there's 10 every year. They're all digital, and I don't believe them. And the water displacement doesn't look right, and the sharks move too quickly, and you just don't feel the weight of the thing. And when you're dealing with
Yeah,
water, the displacement is all about getting the maths of the weight correct. And so when you've got a 1 ton creature, animatronic practical creature that's bursting up out of the water at people, it's like, that's real. And so it was very important that we did that. And it was very difficult too, like building the shark. It comes in like 3 different parts. It's like a giant puppet head. It's a huge attack head on a rail. It's like a submarine with a fin on it. Like, all of this stuff costs a lot of money and it takes like sometimes half a year to put these things together. And we had to build our own tank too. There wasn't a tank big enough to like hold the vision of the movie. All the indoor tanks in
yeah,
Australia are like 25 meters circumference, and like we needed 40 meters of tank, so that when we fill the room with fog, the studio with fog, you can have people actually disappearing in the fog, and you can't disappear in 20 meters of fog. It's like 35 meters, like minimum. So yeah, we had to do a lot of building and a lot of expenditure, for a little sort of indie action film. Um, our budget is an indie budget, but for some reason,
yeah,
we were able to pull off, something pretty grand in terms of scale.
yeah. It's interesting you say. Obviously, the scale is because. What sort of conversations did you have with your cinematographer, Mark Wareham, about how you would approach that? Because it's obviously quite tricky, given obviously that you're in this tank, and the movie calls for not just conveying the vastness of the ocean, but also that kind of claustrophobia as well, because obviously they're kind of trapped in that one space, and I thought that it was perfectly captured. And what sort of conversations did you have about that?
Well, the claustrophobia is a necessity because claustrophobia is good for a horror film, but claustrophobia can also get visually boring and you can shoot yourself in the foot. But you look at a film like The Descent, that is incurably claustrophobic. But like Neil
Yeah,
Marshall is such a dynamic filmmaker that you never really feel bored. And so
yeah,
and it's funny too because I think Mark was always a bit of a fan of my work, and he's like, "Yeah, this guy seems like an interesting director," But he told me later on he wasn't sure. He's like, he wasn't sure if he wanted to do a shark film, and we had our first initial conversation, and I was kind of like, "Look, Mark, like the only way we can do this is to shoot it like German expressionism, and I want to go back to like the way that people would treat studio films in the 1920s with silent films like, Murnau's Sunrise and Nosferatu and things like that, and really lean into the way that Coppola was inspired by those films too when he did Dracula, and just do a hyper color saturated version of Nosferatu with a fin. And he kind of nodded and goes, "I mean, when do we shoot?" He's like, "That sounds fucking awesome." He's like, "That's
Yeah.
exciting."
Sold.
He's like, "Okay, I am a cinematographer, and I just that's my wet dream to do a film like that." And so, yeah, we really lent into the fog. And the one thing about fog is that there's nothing better than colored backlight in fog. And so, we had this beautiful palette where we've got these gorgeous dusky blues that turn into like majestic pink sunrises, that then turn slowly into a blood red sunset. And then at night, we had the idea of putting bioluminescence in the water. So you've got these neon green sci-fi kind of feel, and it looks like some kind of twisted steampunk nightmare. And so the film visually is never boring. And that's really the only way that you can do a claustrophobic film like this, is to just change the palette up every scene. And you've got a complete justification for it because they're trapped in fog. They're starving to death. They haven't had a drink of water in like 3 days, and they're going into a delirium. So psychologically, it kind of makes sense also, So yeah, it was a perfect storm,
I mean,
cinematographically.
it has an almost sort of nightmarish, use that word, nightmarish kind of dreamlike quality to it as well. Once they're trapped on that sort of bit of wreckage, and it never, it treads that fine balance between kind of surreal and being grounded exceptionally well. And as you say, that blend works really, really well. And obviously, although you're in a tank, you're shooting on the water. What sort of technical challenges did that represent for you and the crew? Because obviously there's a lot of extensive work there. And although, unlike Spielberg, you're not challenged by the open ocean, I should imagine there was still some tricky moments to kind of navigate.
Yeah, shooting in a tank is tricky in that you have to pull out all of the the photographic gymnastics that we just talked about, and you've really got to work harder because it doesn't feel real. So you have to make it so dynamic that people forget that. But the great thing about working in a tank is it is a very controlled environment, and so you can really emphasize safety, and you can shoot quickly, and you don't have to worry about rain or storms. Or, I mean, just, you read about Spielberg out there in Martha's Vineyard shooting for 6 months trying to get a shark to work. And it's like, it's so much easier when you're effectively in a large room and everybody is together. And yeah, the controlled environment aspect of it makes it a lot easier. But you just got to be careful because the last thing you want is for this to feel like, film shot indoors in a tank. You have to constantly be doing those big, majestical sort of digital pullbacks that show the space that they're trapped in, the epic nature of where they are in the middle of the ocean rather than, just keeping it this little claustrophobic, 25 by 40 meter space.
Well, I think it would be remiss of me, because I know you've touched upon it. The shark is fully practical, which I adore. Obviously from filmmakers' perspective, and from my perspective as a fan as well, if it's practical, it's a joy to behold. And the shark itself, it looks terrifying. I mean, it looks a little bit different to some of the other sharks that we've seen on screen. And I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the team that created it and obviously puppeted it.
Formation FX, led by Steve Boyle and his team, they are so good to work with. They're kind of like the smaller scale version of Weta in an Australian context. And yeah, they just built a hell of a shark. And I think most shark productions in the last, 5, 10, 20 years, they've just gone the digital route because it's easier. And you just can't do that. It's the weight of the thing moving through the water that is scary. You need to feel like there is a 1-ton monster rising up out of the deep. And the only way to do that is to do it. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, just the unrealistic water displacement of digital sharks in recent films just kills me. I just look at it, I'm like, it just doesn't look real. Like they don't move like real sharks, and you just don't have a sense of the weight of the thing. And then that's the problem with CGI most of the time is these things look amazing, but they don't have any weight to them, and that's where the uncanny valley comes in. It's just like you just feel like this isn't a real textural thing that exists in a space that's interacting with an actor. And so I think, particularly with a shark movie, you have to go with puppetry and animatronics. You just kind of have to, otherwise it's just not as scary,
Yeah, totally agree. Absolutely adored the shark. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, which is a shame because I'd love to talk some more about this. But I wish you the best of luck when the film's released. I think in Australia, I'm right in saying it's the 9th of October. It's released.
9th of October, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
9th of October,
and
yeah.
I hope
great.
people come out and watch it on the big screen. Like I saw it for the
Yes.
first time on a giant screen with an audience. And this is a film that has a lot of audience interactivity. There's like a lot of moaning and groaning and screaming and laughing. And it's something you just can't experience if you're just watching it on your own on a little phone or a TV or whatever. It really is an audience film. So I hope people come out and buy a ticket, because it's a fun ride.
Perfect. Well, Kiah, again, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck with the film. And I'm a Victoria Bitter man all the way.
Yes, you get it. You get it. Everybody in America thinks we drink Fosters. Nobody drinks Fosters.
No. It's
that old thing of, Fosters, is like making love in a canoe. It's fucking close to water. Excuse my profanity, but it's true.
Oh, thank you so much again. It's been an absolute privilege, sir. Best of luck.
She'll be back.